Here we are, 101F, which is part 6, basically, of the nutrition, the end of nutrition. In terms of raw food, I know people have a lot of nutrition questions and concerns, and it goes on and on. And I want, I grew up watching Star Trek. Star Trek meant so much to me when I was, whatever that was, 16 years old. 14 years old, 1967, I think, was Star Trek. And in Star Trek, what could happen was Mr. Spock from Vulcan, he could put his hand on somebody else's head and he just spread his fingers just right. And if he sat still for a moment, he could get inside your thoughts, and he would know what you would know. He could speak your language, as it were, or understand your concerns. And sometimes I wish I could do the Vulcan mind meld on you all and just let you know what's inside my head, because I know when I present things, I'm presenting them from the standpoint of how it's meaningful to me, uh, which may be how it's meaningful to you. I certainly hope it is, and I want
Hey,
I want
wait,
it.
I got a microphone here. If
Sorry, I want it to be incredibly valuable to you. I want it to be meaningful to you, and I can tell by the questions in chat that helps me to know if I'm doing something valuable. Um, to remember what it was like for me, um, you know, 40 years ago, trying to learn how to do raw foods. I, I talked to a friend today who met a new person, and the new person was saying, "Oh, I've read 80-10-10. Have you ever heard of it?" And she said, "Yes, I used to work for Dr. Graham, back in the 80s, and I've known him ever since, and still followed the program." And 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 she said, "Are you going to do it?" And he goes, "No, it's so hard." And she said, "That's just an excuse." And I go, "Well, no, it's obviously too hard for him right now. That seems too hard. For me, being sick seems too hard. For me, having symptoms is too hard. For me, uh, getting old before my time is way too hard. Not having a good memory is drives me nuts. I don't like that. And I know when I rely on starchy foods that my memory goes and I need more sleep and I've got less energy and I start gaining weight, and I learned those lessons again and again. My gosh, until I finally just said no more. I don't have to learn these lessons over again anymore. And from about 30 years ago, I just stopped looking back, thinking, well, there's going to be an answer in cooked food somewhere. Maybe air popped popcorn isn't going to harm me, or maybe baked potatoes, or maybe something so simple. But no, it just didn't matter what it was. It takes over the diet. Cooked food just takes over. It starts with a little. The next thing you know, you're having more and more and more. It takes over. For me, all or none works really, really well. So I just go with raw food and I'm happy. And if something cooked sneaks in, well, so be it. It's snuck in. Um, I'm not going after that, and I'm not going after it day after day. And if it happens, it happens. It's not the end of the world. I mean, I'm a vegan by choice, but not by the definition of who I am. And I think it's important that you know who you are. And that's not necessarily what other people think of you. It's what you think of you. It's who you see when you look in the mirror, and that you living true to yourself becomes way more important than living up to other people's thoughts or expectations or anything else. So here we are. We're going through the raw food thing. Number 6 in a series of 6 presentations on nutrition. which means we've covered it, and we can get on to the other aspects of what I feel are so important in raw foods, like the culinary considerations and the kitchen considerations and the actual food itself considerations. There's a lot more to go through, and we'll be doing that all through the fall and into the end of the year. At the moment, though, I did a series of presentations. I don't even know how many. Lost track, never counted, never thought they were going to be something I'd talk about later on. But I did a series of presentations with a gentleman named T.C. Fry, who's probably influenced more people to go raw than anybody else in the world. Or I guess it depends how you count the chain. But he influenced some people named Harvey and Marilyn Diamond, and they wrote, the book that pretty much changed the world. And he influenced me a lot. I was already a raw fooder when I met him, but he influenced me a lot. He and I became friends. He stayed at my house. And I did a series of lecture presentations with him. We would do weekends. And he would just say, can you come to this city for this weekend and this city for this week? He set up seminars all over the United States. And we would travel. And every weekend, Friday night, I would fly to some other city, San Francisco or Washington, D.C. It didn't matter where. And I'd meet him, and we'd do presentations all day Saturday and Sunday. He and I, and usually one local guest. That was the setup. He and I and one local guest. And and every week, even if the schedule was the same, he would give me different presentation topics. And one time I asked him, I said, I spend a lot of time putting these presentations together. I'm taking this very seriously. This isn't coming off the top of my head. I spend hours, and you're giving me 3-4 new topics every week. It's new topics. Here we are in a different city. Nobody's going to know if I did those topics last week. Why do you always give me new topics? And he said, I'm training you. Well, he did. He opened up my eyes in a lot of ways, and I feel that that's what I'm doing for y'all now. I'm training you at one of those seminars, actually in Kansas City. We're to the question and answer point. We're at the end of the seminar. I've done 2 whole days of presenting. It was myself and T.C. Fry and Virginia Vetrano, Dr. Virginia Vetrano, and we did a long weekend, covered everything. And at the end, one of the questions that came up was, where do you get your cobalt? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit today, and how do I answer that question in a way? Why is it a meaningful question, even though it's not the one that's usually asked, is it? Nonetheless, it's an exceptionally meaningful question, I believe, and it tells a lot about many other things. So we'll look at that today, and why do I want to consider every question to be a good question, rather than, I've answered that 1,000 times, it's no big deal, or anything else. So I really want to respect all the questions, and that one's is valuable and might prove to be the highlight of your day today. I also want to look at in this country, I'm in England at the moment, they call it blinkers. In the States, I think they call them blinders. When you don't want the horses to see off to the side, they put little blinders on them. And this prevents them from being distracted or scared by city traffic or a balloon or somebody's sheet moving in the wind or a plastic bag or something. So it helps keep them calm. But we all wear blinders. We all wear them. We are all affected by our particular view of what's important or what's relevant, or what's a big deal and what's not a big deal. We all have our own filter And here we are talking about raw food week after week after week. Well, raw food's important. And for sure, it's a big deal. Is it the big deal? Well, not so much to me, although it is a big deal, I don't really see it as the only important thing. For instance, um, I've met plenty of raw fooders who predominantly eat meat. I've had debates with some of them, had conversations with many of them, and had good philosophical talks with others. Uh, and I've read about some, but you know, when we talk about raw food, we think automatically we're talking about plants, not raw food animals. So what's going on there? All of a sudden, raw food became not the only important thing, but vegan or plants. And we get a whole new look. We go, wait a minute. Um, how do we take those blinders off and go, what's really important? Well, I've talked about fresh food being the most nutritious for us, whether it's frozen, bottled, boxed, canned, bagged, dried. There's a lot of ways to change food from fresh to almost anything else, and a lot of degrees of that, obviously. But we talked about ripe, raw, whole foods. There's also organic. And I find of almost all the different things that happen in the raw food movement, organic gets dissed by a lot of people. I know some leaders in the raw food movement who say, oh, organic's a scam. I know people who organize events who say, no, organic's a scam. Most of them, I think, do it because they don't want to spend the money. And that's a mindset too, because if they were to look at the very nature of organic foods and just go, you want me to compare food that has poison on it and food that doesn't have poison on it and tell you which is better? I think this is a no-brainer. Now, granted, the people who grow organic food also have organic herbicides and pesticides and things of this nature. They tend to be far less powerful and far shorter lasting, far less harmful to humans, but also with a much shorter half-life, which means that when you put the last dose on it, by the time the food gets to market, that half-life has already expired, and we're dealing with clean organic food. Now, if you can get organic food that doesn't have anything sprayed, all the better. I think that's by far all the better. And that's certainly possible a lot of the time for a lot of crops. And yeah, sometimes you just have to make a qualitative decision. I love going to grocery stores. I like looking in the grocery stores. I've met some other guys who like grocery stores, in fact. And recently just made a new best friend, or a new friend anyway, with the guy who said it's his favorite thing to do is go to grocery stores and walk up and down every shelf, every aisle of the, check everything all around the place and see what's there. It's curiosity to him. Well, I like going to grocery stores, but I'm mostly interested in the produce section, and and I find it just amazing that organic gets a big deal in the grocery store, but a lot of people eating raw food make so little of it. To me, I go to the grocery store, I go to check out, and in every grocery store, when you go to check out, there's magazines at the checkout stand, right? You go and you see the magazines there, and those magazines, I don't know what you call them exactly, but they have a name, and they're short and sweet, and they're crazy headlines. My I was abducted by aliens and held captive for 3 weeks. My daughter has 6 heads. I don't know. There's whatever. There's crazy headlines and unbelievable headlines. And never even in those headlines have I seen an article that said herbicides are good for your health. Fungicides will spice up your sex life. If you want your children to be super intelligent, give them a dose of insecticide every day. No, those things are toxic to people. Those things will kill you. I mean, we used to, I won't say used to, maybe it's still done, but you can poison people with arsenic, and they used to put arsenic on various crops to try to keep bugs away. And there's toxic matter is harmful to us no matter what the dose. And okay, maybe it's only enough to kill a fruit fly and not enough to kill us, but we're taking multiple doses. We're taking a lot of hits. And anything that I can get organic is preferable to me than the non-organic version. I realize I still have to make other qualitative decisions. I went to a grocery store in Texas one time, and they had organic lettuce and they had conventional lettuce. But the organic lettuce was in a bag and had turned to black liquid. And so it was a bag of what was once organic lettuce, but now it had just turned to black liquid. I did not buy the black liquid lettuce. I bought conventional lettuce that day. But when I can get organic that's of equal or usually better quality, I know it's going to taste better. I can tell the difference in taste. I've occasionally done side-by-side testing of organic cucumbers next to conventional cucumbers in the same grocery store, same variety, same date of expiration, The organic always tastes better. If I do side by side with organic bananas and conventional bananas, organic always tastes better. I've done the same thing with mushrooms, things you just maybe don't even expect. Tomatoes, it's always better taste and better for me. How many different ways do I have to get excited about organic to a point of printing it on a t-shirt? Don't panic, it's organic, whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic plants. These are keystone thoughts. And so if you have made a commitment to raw foods and you've really come far with that, and you're getting more comfortable with raw foods as the weeks go on, whether you're in part of our Rawsome Year program or whether you're just checking in with us now and again, whether you've had 10 years experience but you're ready to improve, the way to go is always organic. Now, there's some things that I simply can't get organic that I want, so I get conventional for lack of an ability to get any other kind. And then there's other things that if it's not organic, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to serve it to my family. I don't really want to eat it because I know how much herbicide, pesticide, fungicide I mean, on and on. The rodenticide. There's so many sides that are used, right? And CIDE always implies some kind of death, right? I mean, that's like suicide and infanticide and whatever, genocide. And, um, I certainly don't want that on my food. I don't want to have to recover from a bunch of small doses of poison when I can go out to my own garden and pick lettuce. Uh, Lettuce is just too easy to grow, folks. You can have organic lettuce every day of the year in a New York City small apartment. There's room to grow lettuce. And, and to me, organic is important enough of a factor to be worth mentioning here, where we're only covering 6 sessions on raw food nutrition. Organic is a critical matter. And the more you learn about the toxic chemicals that are used, I mean, there's a toxic chemical. When I was a kid, there was a toxic chemical uh, called DDT. And DDT was some serious business. And DDT used to be used in mosquito trucks to control mosquitoes, and they'd mix it with some kind of an oily mess and make fog. And when the mosquito trucks would go down the road spraying DDT on the people, basically down the roads, and this fog would spread and you could smell it in your houses. The kids in my area did what probably kids did all over the place, and we'd run behind the trucks because they were spraying this fog, and it was kind of neat to run through the fog, and it had a aroma that it only smelled like the mosquito trucks, and it was fun to run behind the trucks, and nobody stopped us. I can't even imagine what we were doing to ourselves. I can't even imagine. But Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, changed a lot of that because DDT eventually got outlawed. DDT use in the United States became outlawed um, on the premise that it was having an adverse effect on various bird egg shells, and it was making them too thin for the babies to have viable births, and it was going to endanger some of the key species, including the American eagle, um, which in fact turned out not to be the case. But we no longer use DDT, thank goodness. Powerful toxic carcinogen. Um, but what we did instead was, the people making DDT didn't really want to give up on that whole deal, so they moved their factories south. They moved to South America and Central America, where they still make DDT to this day and still use it. And so if you're buying food from Argentina or something, if it's not organic, there's a very good chance that it still has DDT on it. And we're 50 years, 60 years down the road with this whole thing. So folks, like, this is an important issue. Sorry, there, I had to move. This is an important issue, and it's one that I don't want to minimize. When I was in college, I read just like an interesting fact. I was already very interested in medicine. I'm reading this fact on mother's milk that said that detectable levels of DDT in mother's milk are now 10 times the allowable values. That was pretty scary. But recently I read the same thing about a new toxin, because now there's a toxin that I've been talking about with my mentees for, gosh, 15, 20 years now. We've been talking about something called glyphosate. And glyphosate is also a broadleaf defoliant. You'll often see it in products such as Roundup and things like it. Um, And now I just recently read that the levels of glyphosate being found in mother's milk is something, and I can't give you the exact number, but something like 100 times the allowable limits is already being found in people who basically pay no attention to what they eat. Just eat a standard Western diet, and they're getting that much glyphosate, which is highly toxic, definitely carcinogenic. We don't even know all the negatives that are going to happen to a generation that's raised on glyphosate. I mean, okay, it wasn't around when I was a kid, but now it is, and it's affecting kids during their developmental years. I mean, they're getting it in mother's milk. This is really scary stuff. No glyphosate in organic foods, and this is a big issue. If I was going to pick one, I'd say glyphosate, but over and over and over, we can just go through the list: herbicide, pesticide, insecticide, rodenticide, and it goes on from there. So please, folks, let's not minimize. Okay, is there more cost? Well, sometimes there's more cost. Sometimes organic costs less. How about that? Certainly here in England, organic kiwi generally costs a few pennies less than conventional kiwi. Don't ask me why. A lot of foods cost about the same. And yes, some cost more. No question. Some cost more. But if you factor in the cost of chemotherapy, or factor in the cost of missed work, or factor in the cost of just downtime in general, or anytime you don't feel good, that could even marginally have been considered food related. I mean, all of a sudden organic doesn't look so expensive. And for me, my health is critically important. I mean, I don't, there's a lot of things that are important to me, but my health is pretty high on that list, because without my health, the other things become unimportant. The other things become like, wait a minute, first let me get my health, because without that, I can't really enjoy the other things anyway. They've got to be secondary. So don't minimize it. Consider, as I've told everybody every time, increase the percentage of organic food on your plate, and you're heading in the right direction. Pat yourself on the back. Increase the percentage of organic food in your diet, on your plate, at each meal, day to day. What can I find that's organic that I can afford? What can I find that's organic that I can't afford not to buy, if that makes any sense? I mean, like, for me, celery, lettuce, cucumber, grapes, every kind of berry, I want organic. I think Brian maybe knows more about this topic than I do, and he can add to the list. But there is, if you go online, there's a dirty dozen list of foods that typically carry the most herbicides and insecticides. It's not a be all end all list, to be quite honest, but it's a fairly good list. Lists the I think the clean 15 and the dirty dozen of the worst and the best foods, the ones that have the most and least pesticides. Don't know if that totally tells you the whole story, because it's not always about volume. Sometimes it's about strength, but it gives you an idea of a place to start. For me personally, lettuce, celery, cucumbers, tomatoes, grapes, berries, apples, pears. These are things that I want organic. Bananas, if I can. Now, usually I can get organic bananas. I like them better. They're worth it. The cost isn't that different anyway. I'm jumping all over the page. Sorry. And anything I can get organic, I certainly will. And then I will sometimes customize and tweak my diet so that I can eat more organic. I can get organic apples. Let's say 1 week I can get organic apples, but I can't get organic pears. So I'll eat more apples. 1 week I can get organic pears, but I can't get organic apples. I'll eat more pears. 1 week I can get organic grapes, but I'm not seeing any apples or pears. I'll eat grapes. I prefer the organic. I'm going to go for the organic. Are there things where it just doesn't make that much difference? Well, yeah, probably some things. It doesn't make that much difference. Or the things where you can't get organic anyway. Things with super thick skin, typically, where you're going to not eat the skin, aren't as affected, certainly by the pesticides that are on the outside. Are any pesticides or any chemicals given to plants that are uptaken through the roots? Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And so sometimes you just really need to consider how important organic is, not just wear blinders and say, well, it's raw, it's okay. It's raw, it's plants, it's raw, it's raw vegan, it's okay. Well, I'm not judging you, and I know you're doing the best, but if your commitment is to continual and never-ending improvement, let's keep organic on your right there in front of you. Hold it out there in front of you as an option that you want to keep moving towards. Increase the percentage of organic foods in your diet and know that you're heading in the right direction by doing so. Okay? Now, this whole thing of organic versus conventional brings to mind an interesting byplay, because they don't call it conventional and unconventional. You know, we don't call it organic and inorganic or non-organic or even chemical laden, chemical free, chemical laden. We don't do that. We call it conventional. Now, conventional conveys a certain mindset. Conventional is what everybody does. That's the norm. That's the normal. This is what's accepted, hence acceptable. This is conventional. This is the way it's done. I get okay. I don't get angry. I don't get upset, but I'm aware of the wool being pulled over my eyes by the use of language and words. When we say, oh, that's conventional, that doesn't sound kooky. That doesn't sound weird. But it opens the door for the opposite to be a little weird, or to be a little kooky, or to be a little extreme, or to be unnecessary, or to be beyond acceptable, really. I mean, it's organic. Like, what's the big deal? Like, who would bother with such? Okay, so this is just the use of words. I'm not talking about, I mean, I've already made my play for organic, but now let's look at the wording of the whole thing and how we're being, okay, and I'm not going to get into the politics of what's going on currently, but we're being cajoled like lambs to slaughter in a general direction that is not to my liking. And this whole thing, we're all in it together. No, I'm not sure we are all in it together. I'm not seeing my leaders being in it, and I'm not seeing the powers that be. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we're being worded, you know, and we're being led, and it's kind of, you know, when you buy a house and you think you just do this, the realtor says just do this, and then we'll have the house, And then they go, okay, now I need this and this and this. And then you give them this and this and this. And then they go, okay, here's the next 8 things we need. You go, oh man, I just thought there was one. Oh, and now we've done those 8. Now there's here, I need these 5 and get me this and this and this and this. And then you can go see the attorney and he'll tell you what he needs. And all of a sudden it becomes this endless chain. Well, I don't know if anybody else feels like you've fallen into this endless chain, but I'm feeling an endless chain in the resistance to sensible nutrition. Just good, clean, common sense, sensible nutrition where I don't think the word organic really even needed to be said. Organic was the only way that food was grown since the beginning of time, up until sometime, I think, in the 1940s, or maybe even not until the 50s. Organic was the only way that food was grown. To me, that's pretty conventional. And the nerve of using that phraseology, that was really well thought out. Let's look at another one. Hey, Emily, I see you out there. So if I told you that I could get you some pharmaceutical quality, pure, 100% pure grade, completely desiccated. It has no shelf life. It'll last forever. I can get you a crystal white powder that will blow your mind. Doesn't it sound to you like I'm talking about drugs? Yeah, sounds to me like I'm talking about drugs. But actually, what I'm talking about is something called a nutritional supplement. Nutritional supplements are little powders. Sometimes they're packed into, pellets or whatever, pills, but they're little powders. And we're told that these little powders are more nutritious than food, that they will add nutrients into our diet, that they will supplement our diet, as if supplement is something that they do rather than their name of what they are called. We ascribe an action to the word supplement. We make it a verb rather than a noun. And we think of supplements. If you were going to say, what do supplements do? We would say they supplement. That's what they do. So I question this highly, because I saw a t-shirt that said whole, fresh, ripe, or organic plants, and supplements wasn't on that list. Supplements aren't whole. We don't know if they're ripe. They're certainly not fresh. No idea whether they're raw or not, but I would doubt it most of the time. Yeah, they probably mostly come from plants. At least most varieties of the vegan varieties probably all came from plants, although there's a lot of exceptions there too. So, I mean, if we look at the whole, fresh, ripe, or organic plants, most supplement don't cover 4 out of 5 of those categories of what's the most nutritious way to eat. How can a supplement be more nutritious than food when it's not whole, not fresh, not ripe, not raw, probably not organic. I mean, phew. And yet we're buying it as if what it did was to supplement our diet. And I've got a lot of problems with this issue, almost more than I can have time for today. But if I very briefly go, there's farmers who've been farming land for decades. There's farmers who've been farming the same land for centuries. This is considered sustainable agriculture. And there's pharmaceutical companies coming in telling us that their farmers are growing plants that are more nutritious than what our farmers are farming, and that they're growing it on soil that is healthier and, if you will, more full of nutrients than what the farmers are growing their plants on. And so when they take those plants that they grow and then they dry them and powder them and store them and mix them with some anti-caking agents and antioxidant agents, and then sell them to you a year or two later. Perhaps it's been on the grocery store shelf for who knows how long. They never tell you on supplements what year those powders were harvested. That stuff is more nutritious than fresh food. And I don't believe any of that, because it goes against everything I've ever learned about nutrition, that powdered food could be more nutritious than fresh food. But B, the nerve of these pharmaceutical companies to openly tell us that they know how to raise soil and they know how to raise plants. They know how to nurture soil and raise plants better than farmers, but they're not going to teach the farmers how to do that they know something better, and they're going to keep it a secret. What the gall? But I don't believe it for a second anyway. How could we think that if we talked a few weeks ago about empty calories. I promised you I would talk to you about empty nutrients. We defined empty calories as a calorie, a protein, a fat, or a carbohydrate that has had all of its associated nutrients removed or partially removed to yield partially empty calories. Stripped of its associated nutrients, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, coenzymes, antioxidants, phytonutrients, water, fiber, whatever they were. But how about if we take a carrot and we start removing things from a carrot, and we remove the protein, fat, and carbohydrate, and the fiber, and the water, and the antioxidants, and the phytonutrients, and all the vitamins, and the minerals, and the enzymes, and the coenzymes, until the only thing we have left is vitamin A or some substrate of vitamin A. And you want me to think that that's more nutritious than the carrot? We took a million things away from the carrot. All we're left with is vitamin A. And somehow I'm told, oh, well, no, don't eat sugar from a bag. That's empty calories. And oil in a bottle, that's empty calories. And protein powder, that's empty calories. But vitamin A, that's a nutrient. No. Vitamin A in a tablet form is an empty nutrient. It's a nutrient without all the other. I mean, we're taught how important it is for nutrients to interact with others, and then we're sold nutrients one at a time on the shelves of every store that sells supplements. I mean, every kind of store. So many health food stores and grocery stores and on through the list. But how can we think that vitamin E could possibly work on its own and be more nutritious, that we're supplementing our diet in any conceivable way to take perfectly good celery and turn it into a powder and remove everything from it and take away the water and take away the carbohydrates, and all we're left with, what do they call that? The product company was Juice Plus, right? And they're going to say, oh no, this is plus. This is better than juice. We've removed the water and we've removed the carbohydrates too. Empty nutrients are easily as critical a factor to allow for as empty calories, folks. Let's not have the wool pulled over our eyes, because if it's not true, if what I'm saying is not true, then sugar out of a bag, protein out of a box, you know, oil out of a bottle, vitamins and minerals out of jars, this should all be perfectly acceptable stuff. And dehydrated celery should be more nutritious than celery. And that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It can't possibly be. So I want to ask you to do a little thought experiment with me. And let's just, for 30 seconds or so, play a game like I did with Emily, where we change the name. I don't want to become politically incorrect, so I'm not going to ask you, Sarah, what's the worst name I could possibly call you? But if I called you that worst name possible, would it be hurtful? Yeah, it would be hurtful. Even though you know I love you, you know we're friends forever and nothing's ever, but if I call you a bad name, whatever it is, something that hurts you, it's hurtful. Even if it comes from me. And you go, oh, I need to reassess here. That hurt. You know when you're hurt. Words dramatically affect things. So for 30 seconds, let's just go back. Emily, I've got this crystal white powder. It's 100% pharmaceutical, pure grade. It's the best you can get. Oh my gosh. It comes in little packets. I can get it for you. It's only $10. Oh, this stuff is $10 a dose, but oh my God, it'll blow you away, and you'll notice the difference right away. It's a detriment to your health. It's not what it does, it's what it's called. They're called detriments. You want to buy some detriments? No, nobody wants to buy detriments. What a name for a product. Food detriments, nutritional detriments. Nobody would buy them. If vitamin A, B, C, D, E, whatever, zinc, selenium, whatever supplements, you go to the grocery store, you go to the health food store, and you go to their supplements section. Can you imagine if that section was called detriments? It's the detriment section. Who would buy a nutritional detriment? Even though that's only the name, not what they do. Nobody would go into that section if it just said detriments instead of supplements. And yet it has to be a detriment. Every single one of those isolated substances has to be a detriment to your total nutritional package compared to whole, fresh, ripe, or organic plants, because those best suit our nutritional needs. They're the best fit. Whether your shoe is too big for you or too small for you, it can't be an improvement over the shoe that fits. Nor can supplements, whether you get too much of something or too little of something, it's not an improvement over the quantity that was appropriate, which nature already figured out for us and put into our fruits and vegetables. It was already done. We don't have to play chemistry. There's no better living through chemistry. When we can drop that mindset, which is a huge, huge veil to uncover, to take off the blinders, to come to terms with the idea that fruits and vegetables are actually best for us. As I talked about earlier in the Goldilocks view of things, fruits and vegetables are just right. Supplements are usually too much, and supplements interact on a first line basis with at least 8 other supplements in general, 8 other nutrients in general, meaning that when you take a massive dose of this, you throw off the relationship of it to everything else. You create 8 more nutritional deficiencies. Every time you take one supplement, you're creating 8 more deficiencies. Oh my gosh, and the line goes, the problems go down the lines. There's just no need to try to become a chemist or to trust the people who made that stuff. I mean, we already know hot dogs are made from the scrapings on the death house floor. Where do we think nutritional supplements come from? You think there's like magic chemistry? They're selling you expensive stuff? No, they're selling you trash. If you knew, and it's not fodder for today's conversation, but if you knew, you wouldn't eat those supplements. They're not houses of health, pharmaceutical companies, not houses of health. So it brings us finally to, where do you get your cobalt? And why did she ask? Does anybody know why the lady asked? The lady asked because cobalt is an essential nutrient that we need in tiny quantities, but we need to have it. And it has to be in our soil because cyanocobalamin, part of the vitamin B12 complex, requires there to be cobalt in the soil, cobalt in our plants, so that the microbes, more than 100 different microbes that live in our mucosa, can manufacture the essential, what's called the extrinsic factor of vitamin B12. They need cobalt in order to be able to do that. Hence B12 is sometimes called cobalamin. So where do you get your cobalt is a good question, unless the lady had listened to my lecture on fruits and vegetables, in which I said most of your vitamins and most of your minerals are coming from fruits and vegetables. The rest are coming from vegetables and fruits. We get all the vitamins, all the minerals from fruits and vegetables. Iron is a mineral, fruits and vegetables. Cobalt is a mineral, fruits and vegetables. Calcium is a mineral, fruits and vegetables. I don't know how many minerals there are. Somebody wants to look at the periodic table and tell me how many minerals there are. I could learn a new number that I don't know. But there's a bunch of minerals. Where do we get them? Fruits and vegetables. We don't have to go elsewhere to find our minerals. And I'm always amazed at the end of a lecture on vitamins and minerals that somebody will then say, yeah, but what about copper? What about zinc? What about, I'm going, fruits and vegetables. It does the job. What kind of fruits and vegetables? Whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic fruits and vegetables. This is an easy concept. There's not like exceptions. There's not yeah buts. There's not flaws and blemishes, grip holds where you could start to tear the whole house of cards down. This is a simple concept that's been going on for millions of years. Um, Whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic plants. It gives us everything we need. And in fact, the more fruits and vegetables we eat, the better we're eating. We've been told all our lives to eat more fruits and vegetables. Now we're finally doing it. And then we're starting to wonder, is it good for us? Is it good enough? Well, yes, it's actually the best. More is not better. Less is not better. We get exactly what we need from our fruits and vegetables. I'm done. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, now's the time. If Larissa says we're done, we're done. I'm really looking forward to a rawsome year. We've got a group that has gone through such change in now half a year. Holy cow. We've got a group that has gone through so much change, become so comfortable with raw foods. All it takes is, I watched a TV show when I was a kid that said if you eat any diet for 2 years, you'll come to love it and defend it. Doesn't take that long to get comfortable with raw foods. At first, it just seems awkward as all heck. And then the next thing you know, it's perfectly automatic. You look at people who've been in relationships for a few years, they're really comfortable with their partners. They know a lot. You would look at somebody who's had a dog for a couple of years, and I mean, they know that dog inside out. Doesn't take a couple of years. You become very comfortable with raw foods really quickly because you're consuming them 3, 4, 5 times a day. All of a sudden, like, all it takes is that little bit of commitment, and the next thing you know, it's perfectly normal. How long does it take you to get used to a new TV show that you've come to love? Oh, I watch that episode every Thursday night at 8 o'clock on channel whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, I don't want to miss that. You get comfortable with it really quickly. The same thing happens with food. All you have to do is make the commitment. If you're still holding back, if you're thinking, well, I don't know about this raw food thing, I'm going to play with it a little bit. I'm going to mix and mingle. Well, I mean, just like any other relationship, if you're not committed, you're not committed. But when you make the commitment, it just gets so easy and such a load taken off your mind. And so for folks, if you're thinking, we're watching our first Rawsome Year group grow into raw foods, like it's becoming easy and automatic. And if you want some of that, folks, we're offering the next group is forming right now. We're looking for 10 people. We get 10 people, we start. And if you want to start sooner, be one of the first 10 to register because we're going to start. And then it'll be a while till we start the next group. So I'm encouraging you to register for the Rawsome Year group because you're either going to be a leader or a follower. You're either going to say, man, I was in on this from the beginning, or, oh no, everybody's out there doing it now, and now I want to try and learn how. Might as well lead. You've been exposed. Now's the time. So without further ado, I hand you back to Larissa to tell us about all the great things that are coming. We're getting ready. I'm excited like a kid for summer holidays. We'll see you in the autumn. We'll be back. And Larissa,
Thank you,
close
Dr.
out with what's been beautiful so far. 2021, a beautiful 2021.
Well, Dr. Graham, such a privilege. I am listening to that and I'm saying how lucky we all to have you personally sitting with us, teaching us all those things that you got from those legends of TC Fry and Diamonds. And it's amazing. There's so much wisdom in your teachings.
Well,
And
thank you.
I really feel privileged. Feel privileged for your time, feel privileged for your knowledge, feel privileged to your commitment to us, the group, Let's Cook Raw group. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Looking for 6 more lessons. We'll keep you posted. There's a couple of questions that we'll get to them for another 5 minutes. I would like to kind of inform you that we're taking summer off. There's a lot of stuff going on in everybody's lives. So if you need support, you can sign up to, there is a awesome program with all the recordings of the lectures and the monthly meetings. You can follow us that way. Go to memberships on letscookrow.com. And yes, we'll see you in the fall. And meanwhile, Dr. Graham, there's a couple of questions in there if you would like to answer them. And that's about it.
Okay, so cool. Not that many questions. Let me just go. Hello, lovely, wonderful Colorado Rocky Mountain High. Hey, Feather. Hi from New Jersey and tabloids. That's what they're called. Thanks, Brian. Tabloids. I don't know what they're called, but that's right. Question. I struggle with blood sugar, and even when I eliminate fats on an all fruit diet, my blood sugar still spikes and eventually will get stuck in pre-diabetic range. Okay, so yeah, there's lots of ways to deal with this, Matt. To go personal and custom with you, I would actually need to go personal and custom, but in general, the big deal I find is creating space for the sugars that you actually intend to consume. So you create space in 2 ways. One, by the sheer physiologic exertions of the body over time, right? So you go to bed at night and then you don't eat for 8 or 10 or 12 hours. And over that time, you blow through maybe 400 or 500 calories, just breathing and pumping blood and doing the things your body does. And that earns you some breakfast. So by creating space, we also can do physical exertions to create space. Essentially, it's like gas in your tank. If you have a full tank, you can't put in another full tank. You can't add more to a tank more than full. So different than your car, we can just let it sit for a period of time. If you wait 18 hours, you've blown through a fair number of calories and you've got room to eat. But the other way is to use your car. If you drive around, then you need more fuel. And if you use your body, you need more fuel. So you can do almost any kind of physical exertions to add to the total fuel usage in order to then have room so that when you can, because we're dealing with when people talk about diabetes, we're dealing with the problem of blood sugar or blood glucose, to be super accurate. And blood sugar, it's not exactly really about how much sugars you consume, because if you've got a hotel with 100 rooms and 90 people come to the front desk, you can give them all rooms right away. And then there's nobody at the front desk. The front desk is our bloodstream. So if you consume a bunch of glucose and fructose, and the muscles need glucose and fructose, then the sugars, the glucose and fructose, is going to go right out of the bloodstream and right into the muscles. But if there's not the need, if the muscles don't need it, then they're not going to uptake it. And you're going to end up with sustained elevated blood sugar. And this is the problem. So create need and then add the supply. And that should pretty well take care of the problem.
You've got to come up.
Thank you, Doc.
I've heard-
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I hope it makes sense. it actually answers two questions at once, and I'm going to get back to the other one. I've heard people say when you eat organic, you need fewer calories, less calories, fewer calories you can number, less ketchup, fewer French fries. Can you share your thoughts on this, please? Uh, well, you have to do a little bit of, I mean, like we're saying, when you add toxic matter, you create an extended metabolic load for the body to have to deal with, or an expanded metabolic load for the body to have to deal with those toxins. That is a little more work. I don't know if that necessarily transfers into fewer calorie. I mean, if it does, you know, it's a very small amount of fewer calories. So I don't know if I would buy that. Um, you do, as we're saying so often, and there was a study done, I believe, by Rutgers University, where they looked at conventional grown foods and organic versions of the same foods, and almost invariably the organic versions uh, carried more nutrients and more calories. So if an organic banana is a little bit sweeter than a conventional banana, let's say all things equal, the variety and the size and everything else, if the organic variety is a little bit sweeter, and it's got 100 calories and the conventional banana only had 90 or 85 or whatever, well, then it would seem like you're eating less food, like you're eating fewer calories, but actually you're not. You're actually taking in as many. You're eating less food to get the same number of calories. So I don't really see a difference in that. A couple of us in Rossmere. Uh, the Candida question, I'm not sure that I can answer it because it's so custom, but the answer is almost the same as the question that Matt asked. Actually, I think this question got asked three different ways. The answer is, again, almost the same. You always want to create space for calories before you eat calories. If you create the space first, um, it's kind of like sleep. If you're not sleepy, laying down to go to sleep isn't going to really work. First, you have to get yourself sleepy by putting in a day, and then you can go to sleep and sleep all night. But if you like woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning after 9 hours of sleep, and then at 10 o'clock in the morning you tried to go back to sleep and sleep again for another 10, I mean, it's not going to work. You can't put more sleep into a well slept body, and you can't put more calories in or more sugars in to a body that has already full or almost full. We have to create the need. If you create the need, then you don't have the sustained elevated blood sugar that will lead to candida issues. So no, I don't see it happen in people that are getting it perfectly right. Um, but for the people who have those, listen, I have my own susceptibilities. Candida is not really one of them, um, but I have my own susceptibilities, and we all have our own genetic strengths and weaknesses. So people with the propensity, if you will, for candida just have to look at that and go, okay, I have to really fine tune this aspect of my program in order to make it work for me. Okay, so skin rash from eating organic vegetables. Man, that's a tough one. That we're gonna have to really look at that with some specifics, Rachel, before I could actually comment. I mean, you have to go back to knowing who the grower was, or very specific which foods And is it the same ones? Uh, your own specific fruit or veg sensitivities is beyond our scope. Uh, the question about no overts, I, I answered a question about this, I thought last week also, is like, I have no idea how long you can go without overts. Nobody's ever tried that. And the answer and the question would be, until what happens, until something bad happens. Well, I don't want to find out. Certainly we've seen people go long periods of time with no overts. If you're eating no overts, you still have to watch to be very careful that you're eating sufficient calories. Breastfeeding mom has to be very careful to make sure she's eating sufficient calories. Breastfeeding mom needs almost 1,000 extra calories just to cover breastfeeding on top of her own needs. So weight loss during breastfeeding, for a person who needs to lose some weight, it still might adversely affect your mother's milk production. For a lady who doesn't need to lose any weight, weight loss really is contraindicated. So you got to make sure you eat enough, whether or not that's by eating more volume of fruit and veg, or by including some small quantities of concentrated fats. I think that's an option, not an automatic one way or the other. Iodine is in all soil that has ever been under water. Almost all soil in the entire world has been underwater at some point or another, but there are 2 or 3 spots in the world where there is no iodine in the soil. I think Michigan and a little bit of the surrounding states has little to no iodine in the soil, and there are some places in Europe as well. But these are very small spots, not our major food production areas generally, and in our global economy of food, where food comes from all around the world, iodine excess nor iodine deficiency is typically a concern. It's an overblown thing when people start saying, "Oh, you got to eat sea vegetables," because you certainly don't. You can get plenty of iodine from anything grown on land, as long as it wasn't grown in Michigan. This question: can't lose weight, and the answer is the same as it was to the other 2 questions. You got to create the space. I would say that if you're going to eat every day, you're going to be active every day. If you really want to lose weight, you're going to be active every day. If what you're doing is primarily weight work, as you say, depends on what you're doing with the weights, whether you're working in a bodybuilding range or in a strength gaining range. But I would add in something that is muscular endurance. I would add in something that is cardio or long term, even if it's very low level cardio. It could be walking, but in that case it has to be longer walks. But if you don't have to you don't have to exercise every day, just on the days you want to eat. Why is there more women here than men? Because women are far more concerned about taking care of themselves than men are. Men gave up somewheres around high school. They just don't care. Women are smarter? I don't know. Women are more vain. Oop, maybe I'm not supposed to say that. Women just women just tend to take care of themselves better, and there's also some personality things that are kind of cool. Like I saw for years and years, and still see, that in a lot of families, men will be the first one to come home and say, "Honey, we need to eat raw food," because they heard about it, they kind of liked the idea, it made sense. But then the woman will say, "Okay, well, if raw foods are great, then let's just go 100% raw." And the woman is much more willing to make a commitment and go 100% raw. Whereas the man was saying, no, I just meant eat more raw foods. I didn't mean go 100%. Men are, as we know, a little bit commitment shy as a general rule. To me, I didn't really make a commitment to 100% raw. I made a commitment to 100% health. And once I got healthy enough, raw was just part of that. But so was whole, fresh, ripe, and organic. And so was being fit. And so was taking care of my mind. And so was having a positive attitude all the time. And so was personal growth. And so was better communication skills. And so was becoming a more sensitive person. And so was a lot of things that, because I know that if I'm not growing, I'm dying. So I just want to keep growing. That's the way it's got to be for me. Keep growing.